Excited? Having fun? Some of you, okay. Cool. I have been doing a lot of voice work over the last 18 months. I've been this really awesome opportunity where we built a lot of prototypes. And I'm going to talk about some of my journeys through this. I want to start with talking about these guys. I'm pretty sure you guys have seen an Amazon Echo, right? How many of you own a Google Home? Okay, some people. What about this guy? So this is my favorite device. It's the cheapest of the Amazons. It's called a Dash Wand. Costs $20. In fact, for a bunch of time, Amazon was giving a $20 rebate for it. The nice thing is I can carry it with me wherever I want. And it's not listening all the time. If I wanted to do something, I can just press a button. What time is it?
It's 2:07 p.m.
Right. It's nice and it feels good in my hand. I guess that's why I like it. When I've been using these things, one of the things I've noticed is most of these devices don't really have really good skills on them. If I want to do something like find a restaurant, and this is something that me and my wife try to do often, we start by saying, well, what restaurants are nearby? And it gives us a whole list of them. If you want to know which ones are serving alcohol, or if you're in the mood for something spicy, it's really, really hard to create this complicated statement saying, which restaurants nearby have spicy food and are open right now. In contrast, if you actually have a conversation with a human being, it's more along the lines of the right-hand side. You say, what are my options? Which ones of those have alcohol? It maintains the context. And it's not surprising. When these devices got there, everyone said, okay, it's easy to build apps on these things. And people started programming at a really low level. Imagine when the web came out, the first days where people were playing with HTML and a little bit of JavaScript, right? Once you start to realize how much more powerful these things can be, and you realize that people want that level of great user experience, you start needing a lot more. And a large part of what I've done over the last little bit is realizing that I've built voice apps that I've not been very happy with, and realizing what it took me to do that. So with all that background, I built this thing. We announced it last year at Dreamforce. It's called Violet. And Violet is designed to help you build those great voice apps. It's a developer tool. It's inspired by lessons that I've seen in web world, in the mobile world. Targeted. It's Node.js framework targeted for developers. You can deploy it on Amazon Alexa, Google Home. But the most important part of it is it realizes that if you want to build something that is good, you can't have all your, it's called business logic, intertwined with with the user experience logic. So what lessons can we take, And in particular, I'm a huge fan of HTML. HTML is this sort of high-level language that user experience people can look at. Developers can work with it, but most of your complicated code is not really in it. So how can we take those kinds of ideas, have something simple, so that you can integrate and look at it sometimes in the user experience mode while also working with application logic. And while doing this, it's important to remember that building a web app a great web app in many ways is easier than building a great voice app. When you're looking at web apps, it's visual. You can critique it while you're coding, but voice applications are temporal. You can't go from start to stop while just looking at it. You kind of have to play it in your head. And when I've been building it, I've needed to actually put time aside to think like a user experience person and critique it. And at other times, I I just going through it and adding the logic. And so it is important to separate these things, and that's in part what the big difference between Violet when we had it when we announced it last year and where it's gotten over the last year. We've gotten feedback from a lot of people. We've realized this is what it takes to build something good. I'm going to walk you guys through. I'm going to say the two big use cases that such an application framework needs. But to start off, you need some framework code. You just define it up there. You declare what you're going to be getting data in. In this case, food item is a phrase. You say, I'm expecting a user to say any restaurants close by. You respond by saying the say tag here, and you have that I/O logic with some amount of that business logic there. In this case, resolve, and we'll get into more details, but we've thought about sort of separating it so that you can focus on your flow separately. But the key part in all of this is the part that I've highlighted right now. It is that conversational flow, and in this particular case, it's saying that there is an app which lets the user make a choice. One of the choices is that statement, the user saying any restaurants that are close by that have a particular food item. And if the user says that, then look it up, and afterwards it'll run that code. So with this underpinning, we can start to focus on these two big use cases. And let's work on that. We were building, there's actually a Trailhead module for this, and we were building, I have a link to it later on, and for that we were thinking of something that people might want to do. And let's think about this example of a game management application, right? Now, the first time somebody wants to build this, they will often do it like that on the left-hand side. It's your first attempt, and you say something to the effect of, what game nights have been planned? The system says something. Oh yeah, what game nights are coming next, right? You're not taking advantage of that context. So my recommendation, if you want to build something like this, is write in that sample, what I call a conversation script. What would it look like? And writing that down with potentially nested user decisions can help a beginner coming to this. Now, somebody who's been using your app in final state will know exactly what it can do and what it can't do, and will likely remember it. And by the way, that remembering it is not that easy because we think in an intuitive manner, right? So just figuring out what is the right kind of prompt for a beginner user will help you design that conversation better. For this game nights, to find out what has been planned already, we've created this sample on the right-hand side. And if we want to build this out, it becomes as simple as this code. Now, the important part here is that we are telling the user that they need to make a decision, right? For the question, would you like to hear, would you like to hear of game nights that are, sorry. For the original question of, For the original question of what has been planned, we want the system to ask the user, would you like to hear about what game nights are in the past or what are coming up? And then if the user says what's coming up, then you want to run an appropriate piece of code. So the basic, think of this as a decision tree of nested decisions that users make. Each time the system asking the user something, the user making a choice, and then appropriately going deeper and deeper into this tree. So what is this going to sound like? Launch game night.
Hey, need me?
What has been planned? Ask game nights, what has been planned?
I couldn't find any enabled video skills. Go to the music.
It's acting up.
Section. Provider you want. I think you would build it.
Give it a second. I'm going to try once more. Ask game nights what has been planned.
I couldn't find any enabled video skills.
Okay, it's confused. However, I will say for a fact that this did work, at least in a not so large conference room. And it does pretty much what's written there. You know, and first time you build this, you listen to it and you realize, oh yeah, the way I'd structured it wasn't right, so you edit it, right? And the nice part about having the flow highlighted is that you can tweak and you can refine that part independent of that logic, as I was mentioning earlier. This, I'm going to call it design pattern of nested decisions, is a really important primitive that people typically have in even a web app. You know, menus. You have nested menus to get into any particular part of an app. That's the sort of the first big part of it. The second big part of a typical enterprise app is the idea of a form. When you want to create something like a game, like a game event, you need like 5 or 6 inputs from a user, and then the question becomes, what's the right way to get it? Now, in the voice world, we talk about it as using the phrase called dialogues. And a dialogue can have multiple items. In this particular case, if you're trying to plan a game night, you know, it needs a day. What day would you like it? What time would you like it? And a few more other questions. So you have multiple items. You define which items are required. And you have, in this dialogue, on the top, you say, I want you to get all the required parameters. So you can theoretically have non-required parameters. If a user gives them, then the system can make appropriate decisions based on that. Everything makes sense so far? So just highlighting again, your typical apps, you're often thinking of these nested menus or these forms. These are the basic 2 big concepts that I have seen in voice applications of decisions and dialogues, and we've tried to make it really, really easy. Are there other common widgets? Yes, there are. I have met them, but they're rare. It's kind of like, you know, you're building a web app or you're building a game. A game often, you know, yeah, you can build it with HTML, but it requires very different primitives. There are edge cases, but in my experience, 90% of the time, these work. So with that, you know, given that I've been doing a lot of stuff hooking into Salesforce, we've added some support to integrate into Salesforce. Now, this is a Node framework, so you can theoretically use any Node library to integrate with Salesforce. But we've got a Salesforce plugin. You load it. You can define properties that you care about. The stars that you see on the properties are basically saying whether it's a built-in type or not, built-in field or not. And then, if you want to query, you just do .load. If you want to store data, there's a store method, and similarly, there's an update method. Right? It's extremely easy. I needed to do it a lot, and so there's easy support for it. But beyond just the Salesforce and Force.com integration, we also do have other integrations. Like one of the use cases, so I deploy in Heroku a lot, and some of the times I've needed to integrate with Postgres, and so we've got the same APIs that work there. With that, we've also provided a bunch of example scripts that we've needed that you can theoretically just, you know, hit one button, deploy it, configure it, to have it talking to you, one of your sales examples. Of course, what I think you will likely need to do is modify it to your particular needs. And that's the part where things get exciting. That's the part where I've seen a lot of people do really, really interesting things. So would love to see what you guys are able to build with it. Love to hear your thoughts, what you see as potentially missing. This is the link. for the trail, we've actually in the quick start area, you can actually play with Violet. The code is up there. We've got the link to the project website. Check it out. I'd love to hear your feedback. We've been getting some incredible feedback, really good insights. Want to keep iterating and build something that actually makes it really easy to build amazing apps, not just something that is cookie cutter, but something that that can build that experience that people say, like, this gets it. It's not laborious app to use. It's, it knows my settings, my preferences. It gets me, trying to build that killer app for the voice world. So that's it for me. Love to hear questions. Please reach out if there's anything. Thank you.